She patted Nanny's hand, and Nanny stared at her hand as though something horrible had happened to it. It's just that everyone's used to you being more firm, she said.
I thought I might make some jam and cakes for the produce stall, said Granny.
Oh, good.
Are there any sick people want visiting?
Nanny stared at the trees. It was getting worse and worse. She rummaged in her memory for anyone in the locality sick enough to warrant a ministering visit, but well enough to survive the shock of a ministering visit by Granny Weatherwax. When it came to practical psychology and the more robust type of folk physiotherapy, Granny was without equal. In fact, she could even do the latter at a distance, for many a pain-racked soul had left their beds and walked, nay, ran, as the news that she was coming got their way. Everyone's pretty well at the moment, said Nanny diplomatically.
Any folks want cheering up?
It was taken for granted by
Any old folks want cheering up?
It was taken for granted by both women that old people did not include them. A witch aged 97 would not have included herself. Old people happened to other people. Oh, all fairly cheery right now.
Maybe I could tell stories to the kiddies.
Nanny nodded. Granny had done that once before when the mood had briefly taken her. It had worked pretty well as far as the children were concerned. They'd listened with open-mouthed attention and apparent enjoyment to a traditional folk legend. The problem had come when they'd gone home afterwards and asked the meaning of words like disemboweled.
I could sit in a rocking chair while I tell 'em, Granny added. That's how it's done, I recall. And I could make some of my special treacle coffee apples. Wouldn't that be nice?
Nanny nodded again in a sort of horrified reverie. She realized that only she stood in the way of a wholesale rampage of niceness. Toffee? She said. Would that be the sort you did that shatters like glass, or the sort where our boy Pusey had to have his mouth levered open with a spoon?
I reckon I know what I did wrong last time.
You know you and sugar don't get along, Esme. Remember them all-day suckers you made?
Well, they did last all day, Gaitha.
Well, only 'cause Pusey couldn't get it out of his little mouth until we pulled 2 of his teeth. Esme, you just gotta stick to pickles. You and pickles just go so well.
I gotta do something, Gaitha. I can't be an old grump all the time. I know. I'll help at the trials. Bound to be a lot that needs doing, huh?
Nanny grinned inwardly. So that was it. Oh, why, yes, I'm sure Miss Erie would be happy to tell you what to do. And more fool her if she does, she thought, because I can tell you're planning something.
I shall talk to her, said Granny Weatherwax. I'm sure there's a million things I could do to help if I set my mind to it.
Oh, I'm sure you will, said Nanny hardly. I've a feeling you're going to make a big difference. Granny started to rummage in the bag again.
Are you going to be along as well, aren't you, Gaitha?
Oh, me? Said Nanny. I wouldn't miss it for the worlds. Nanny got up especially early. If there was going to be any unpleasantness, she wanted a ringside seat. What there was bunting. It was hanging from tree to tree in terrible, brightly colored loops as she walked toward the trials. There was something oddly familiar about it, too. It should not technically be possible for anyone with a pair of scissors to be unable to cut out a triangle, but someone had managed it. And it was also obvious that the flags had been made from old clothes, painstakingly cut up. Nanny knew this because not many real flags have collars. In the Fields trial, people were setting up stalls and falling over children. The committee were standing uncertainly under a tree, occasionally glancing up at a pink figure at the top of a very long ladder. "She was here before it was light," said Lettice as Nanny approached. "She said she'd been up all night making flags."
Tell her about the cakes, said Grandma Beavis darkly.
"Oh, she made cakes?" said Nanny. "But she can't cook." The committee shuffled aside. A lot of the ladies contributed to the food for the trials. It was a tradition and an informal competition in its own right. At the center of the spread of covered plates was a large platter piled high with things of indefinite color and shape. It looked as though a herd of small cows had eaten a lot of raisins and then been ill. They were cakes, prehistoric cakes, cakes of great weight and presence that had no place among the iced dainties. Oh, she's never had the knack for it, Nanny said weakly. Has anybody tried one? said Gammer solemnly. Oh, tough, are they?
You could beat a troll to death with them.
But she was so, sort of, proud of them, said Lettice. And then there's the jam. It was a large pot. It seemed to be filled with solidified purple lava. Oh, it's nice color, said Nanny. Anyone tasted it?
We couldn't get the spoon out, said Gammer.
Oh, I'm sure.
We only got it in with a hammer.
What's she planning, Mrs. Ogg? She's got a weak and vengeful nature, said Lettice. You're her friend, she added in her tone, suggesting that this is much an accusation as a statement. Oh, I don't know what she's thinking, Mrs. Earwig. I thought she was staying away. She said she was going to take an interest and encourage the young'uns. Oh, she's planning something, said Lettice darkly. Those cakes are a plot to undermine my authority. No, that's how she always cooks, said Nanny. She just hasn't got the knack. Your authority, huh? She thought darkly.
She's nearly finished the flags, Gammer reported. Now she's going to try to make herself useful again.
Well, I suppose we could ask her to do the lucky dip? Nanny looked blank. You mean where kids fish around in a big tub full of bran to see what they can pull out? Yes. And you're going to let Granny Weatherwax do that? Yes. Only she's got a funny sense of humor, if you know what I mean, yeah?
Good morning to you all.
It was Granny Weatherwax's voice. Nanny Ogg had known it for most of her life, but it had a strange edge to it again. It sounded nice. We were wondering if you could supervise the bran tub, Miss Weatherwax. Nanny flinched, but Granny merely said,
Happy to, Miss Earwig. I can't wait to see the expressions on their little faces as they pull out the goodies.
Nor can I, Nanny thought. When the others had scurried off, she sidled up to her friend. Why are you doing this? She said.
I really don't know what you mean, Gaitha.
I've seen you face down terrible creatures, Esme. I once seen you catch a unicorn, for goodness sake. What are you planning?
I still don't know what you mean, Gaitha.
Are you angry because they won't let you enter, and now you're planning some sort of horrible revenge? For a moment they both looked at the field. It was beginning to fill up. People were bowling for pigs and fighting on the greasy pole. The Lancier Volunteer Band was trying to play a medley of popular tunes, and it was only a pity that each musician was playing a different one. Small children were fighting. It was going to be a scorcher of a day, probably the last one of the year. Their eyes were drawn to the roped-off square in the center of the field.
Are you going to enter the trials, Gaitha? Said Granny.
You never answered my question.
What question was that?
Nanny decided not to hammer on a locked door. Yes, I am. I'm going to have a go, as it happens, she says.
Well, I certainly hope you win, then. I'd cheer you on, only that wouldn't be fair to the others. I will merge into the background and just be as quiet as a little mouse.
Nanny tried her guile. Her face spread into a wide pink grin, and she nudged her friend. Oh, right, she said. Only you can tell me. I wouldn't like to miss it when it happens, so if you just give me a little signal when you're going to do it, huh?
What's that you're referring to, Gaitha?
Esme Weatherwax, sometimes I wish I could give you a bloody good slap.
Oh, dear.
Nanny Ogg didn't often swear, or at least use words beyond the boundaries of what Lancerians thought of as colorful language. She looked as if she habitually used bad words and had just thought up a good one, but most witches were quite careful about what they say. You can never be sure what the words are going to do when they're out of earshot. But now she swore under her breath and caused a small brief fires to start in the dry grass. This put her in just about the right frame of mind for the cursing.